Hello everyone, I am Dibyak Biswas. I'm the PLM Program Manager at Steepcraft Systems Private Limited. In this session, we are going to discuss about widget development on Dassault Systems 3D Experience platform. We'll try to deep dive into the concepts of widget and we'll explain a few things. Let's begin. So our objective is to familiarize you with the concepts of widget development on 3D Experience platform. We'll try to give you a crash course on the so-called untrusted widget. We'll give you some best practices about widget development and we'll try to entice you to create custom 3D dashboard widgets. So before we begin, let's understand what is a widget. Widgets can be seen everywhere. Today they are very much available on mobile platforms as well as your tablets. As I would like to call it, widgets are gadgets on a window frame. So let's understand how do these widgets look like on the 3D Experience platform. So as you can see on this slide, this is the 3D Experience platform's 3D dashboard application. 3D dashboard application has the capability to create dashboards which are window frames and has multiple tabs, and in every tab you can pin multiple widgets. So this is one of a custom widget that's displayed on the screen, which says Steepcraft says hi. Steepcraft is expertises in so and so things. So this is a custom widget which has been pinned on this dashboard. As you can see, widgets can be moved around on a frame, as you saw, and you can maximize it and fit it to your window frame. You have this search application, or it's available as a text box, search text box on top of your dashboard application, where you can search, and even the search results can be pinned as a widget on your dashboard, as you can see right now on your screen. So here you see the search widget has been pinned on your dashboard screen with the specific search result. Then you have this compass that you just saw. The compass on the 3D dashboard application allows you to choose your widgets that you want to use on your dashboard, and you can search for your widgets. I searched for the collaborative lifecycle widget, and then I can drag it and drop it on your window frame. And as you see, this is not completely visible on your dashboard. So what we'll do next is we'll try to fit everything in this dashboard by clicking on that fit command. And now you see all the widgets that you dropped on your dashboard and pinned on your dashboard, they are now properly aligned and it completely occupies the entire real estate of your dashboard. And now you can also search within your dashboard. uh, when you search for a specific text, it will search for that text in all the available widgets on your dashboard. So these are some of the capabilities that 3D Experience platform provides, and you can exploit it, create your own widget, and the some of the things that you can do. Why do we need a custom widget? Because every organization is unique and they are special due to their own unique standard processes. While 3D Experience platform gives you certain uh, good practices, best practices implemented in the form of widgets and other applications. But if you have your own processes, you can build those processes in the form of a small application in the form of a widget. So this allows you to fit the out-of-the-box gap, the processes and functionalities which cannot be fulfilled with the out-of-the-box processes can be customized and built into a widget. You can have your custom integrations through with the help of widget. Widget can uh, create an interface for you to connect to the different other enterprise systems like ERP, MES, supply collaboration, etc. You can create your own custom reports as widgets, and the best thing is that all these custom applications that you create in the form of widgets, they are not impacted by any 3D experience platform upgrades. Now let's understand what is a trusted and what is an untrusted widget. Untrusted widgets. Widgets which should not access your 3D experience platform's information. 3D experience platform has multiple native applications like Innovia, Delmia, Katia, BioVia, GeoVia. All these applications of 3D experience platform has some information, some data, which is required in a typical product lifecycle management process. You can create untrusted widgets such that while those widgets fulfill some of the processes of your organization, but if they do not need to access any of your data that resides within the 3D experience platform, then you create them as untrusted widgets. So that way you enable security, but at the same time you can create an interface to a different system onto the 3D experience platform. Now these are invoked using a out-of-the-box widget called Run Your App. We'll show you what Run Your App widget is. All the interactions with the 3D dashboard and other widgets are allowed. So what are the interactions? Interactions are you can drag and drop information from one out-of-the-box widget onto this untrusted widget. You can listen to some events, we'll talk about them later. And then these are executed within the untrusted 3D dashboard domain. So you have to create this domain or this application server with a specific URL, for example, untrusted3ddashboard.com, whatever. So what happens is all your untrusted widgets will run under this domain, and this domain is not allowed to interact with your usual mainstream servers of Innovia, Dashboard, Katia, Delmia, etc. What are trusted widgets? Trusted widgets are the ones which just stand alone and have their own launch icons under the 3D campus. That means they have their own icons. You do not have to run them using a third widget like Run Your App. They're allowed to access 3D experiences platform data using web services. Interactions with 3D dashboard and other widgets are allowed. And then they're executed within the usual trusted 3D dashboard domain. That means this is the usual 3D dashboard server that you have in your organization. So how do you identify what is the untrusted domain? During the installation of 3D experience, if you have noticed or your deployment architect has noticed, in one of the parameters, in one of the system settings, they have to add a domain for the untrusted dashboard server. If you have not done that during the installation, you can still create that untrusted domain. You can go to this specific properties file, which is called uwp-config.properties, which resides under the your 3D dashboard installation directory. In this properties file, which resides under the win_b64 on a Windows system or Linux_e64 in a Linux system, you have this property entry called uwp.domaincontrol.untrusted, wherein you have to put the value as your untrusted URL. So one typical example for our organization can be for our organization, that is SGS, Steepcraft Systems, is untrusted.3ddashboard.sgs.com. This can be any valid domain that you have created in your web server. And also you can find it in another property entry key, which is under the uwb.properties. This is a JSON entry where you see the property key as apps.urls.untrusted, and the value of which is the same untrusted domain name that you had put in the uwb config.properties. So as I told you, if you have not created this domain during the installation, you can do it later. And what you have to worry about is this should be a valid domain which should be configured in your web server. So some examples of the untrusted widget can be, for example, in our organization, we have created an artificial intelligence chatbot, and this chatbot does not need to interact with other dashboard widgets, but it also does not need to access any of your PLM data. So this is a chatbot which answers your questions. You can have a third-party server which is a repository for all your help documents, and you can use this chatbot to answer the questions specific to PLM or any other questions that you may have in your organization. So this can come in very handy. Users can use the 3D dashboard to access this widget and create their own AI chatbot application. So for example, in this chatbot, what we are doing is we are asking a few questions. You see, um, you say hi, and the chatbot responds to you, and then you can ask a question. For example, see, so what is Excel lead, and so it answers for you. It gives you this. So all these answers uh, are returned from a separate AI chatbot server that you may have. In this example, what we have used is we have used Bootstrap to create the user interface, and our chatbot server is written using Python, and it is hosted on a Flask server. Moving on, this is another example of a trusted widget. The previous one was an untrusted widget. This is a trusted widget. Why is it trusted? Because in this widget, we need to pull in information from the PLM system, and we need to distribute that information or publish that information on a supplier portal. So through this widget, we have created an interface through which we allow the users to choose what information to send to the supplier portal and to see the status of the um, message is delivery or the information's delivery to the supplier portal. So this is how it looks like. We have created multiple filters. We have created multiple commands. You can send the data. You can check the statuses. You can see the statuses are shown here using color codings. If there is a failure, you can select and you can resend the data. And all these things have been built. You get alert messages as well. All this has been created using View Beautify. Of course, Node.js has been used. We have used Webpack to bundle the solution, and we have created web services to access the information from 3D space, as well as we have web services to send the data to an external webtop application. And that external webtop application is the supplier portal. So this is an interface. This is an interface to the supplier portal, which resides on the 3D dashboard platform, and users can view the status of the delivery of the files and other information that the user wants to send to the supplier. So let's tell you what is a Run Your app. As I told you, Run Your app is a widget, which is an out-of-the-box widget. It is used to run any untrusted widgets. To repeat, untrusted widgets are the ones which are applications, but they do not need to access or they are not allowed to access your PLM data. Hence, you will run it using the Run Your app widget, and you can do whatever you want by creating your own processes. So an example of Run Your app, how to use this Run Your app. Run Your app is available as a specific icon under the compass. You can drag it onto your dashboard, and then you see this widget has a placeholder or a text box to allow you to add your own URL. Herein we have created one demo untrusted widget which we have hosted in a different web server. The URL of that application, the landing page, is denoted by this HTML of that application. So we have to specify the URL of that landing page, and then you just hit run, and whatever is available in your application will be displayed onto this untrusted widget. So what are the features that you get through this Run Your app? You have the option to have maximize, minimize. If you have noticed, when you see this lock icon, if you hover your mouse, it says this widget is untrusted. So that's the clear indication of an untrusted widget, and the use of this terminology is out of the box. So that's one, and you can do full screen. Then when you click on this drop down arrow button, you will see the options like preferences, share, duplicate. These are all out of the box actions available on all the widgets. and it's available on the Run Your App widget as well. We'll focus on the preferences action. What happens is when you click on the preferences, if you have coded it rightly, these preferences can be coded in your application. It's a very no code kind of thing where you specify what are the preferences you need for your specific application, and all these preferences are actually coded in the landing page of your application, the HTML page. Why do I say it's a no code? Because these are set of some specific 3D experience specific tags through which you can add any number of preferences. So here I have added 3 preferences, which are org, expertise 1, expertise 2, expertise 3. You can define the type of this field, whether it's a text box, whether it's a option, list options. So these are the things that you can specify when you put these preferences as under specific 3D dashboard specific tags in your HTML page. So the objective of preferences is to allow the users to provide some inputs and customize the behavior of the application based on the user provided inputs. So all these things have to be handled in your code. Whatever output is provided, whatever input is provided by the users, you have to check them in your code, and you have to do the write the specific JavaScript functions to do the processes accordingly. So here I have given some options, hard-coded options within my HTML code. Okay, UPS migration to those preferences for the users to choose from. And when I say save, it reads those preferences, and I've written a simple code to just output those user specified preferences onto this main page. So you see steep graph expertises in unified product structure, migration, and upgrade. These are the 3 choices that we selected as expertise 1, 2, and 3 respectively. Moving on, now what are the widget development best practices? So the most important thing that we have to remember is whether it's an untrusted widget or it's a trusted widget, the widgets must be deployed in its own web server. The code of the widget is it's an HTML and DHTML code. All that thing, all those codes can be deployed in a specific web server because it's a web code. Definitely all your web services that you write, or you can use out of the box web services, those web services will definitely reside in the respective application servers. So if you use 3D spaces web services, they are already there in the 3D space realm, or the 3D space coder can create some web services for you, which will definitely be hosted on the 3D space, the so-called Innovia application server, and you can use it in your widget application. You have to create modularized and reusable JavaScript code. This is a very generalized and universal notion. You should create modularized and reusable JavaScript code. AMD, asynchronous module definition, is a framework which allows you to create JavaScript modules. As per the latest JavaScript framework, you can have modules within the vanilla JavaScript realm as well, which are used using import and exports. You can use IndexedDB. This is a feature specific to browsers. Browsers support something called IndexedDB to store information in the browser cache. When your typical browser cache is not enough to handle large data that you need to put in your browser for temporary calculations or temporary computations, you can use IndexedDB instead. It's faster and it supports more data to be cached in the browser. You should query data from 3D space index if required. This is the 3D space index is the XLEAD server, now called the NetVibes. It is the index server. If you want to query any information from the PLM domain or the 3D experience platform, you should do it from the you should query the information from the 3D space index because it is faster. And you should create asynchronous JavaScript code wherever possible, so that your user interface is very responsive and fast. And of course, you should not reinvent the wheel. Use the standard and proven open source JavaScript frameworks. You do not need to create the entire tables and grids or forms. You have the very well-to-do frameworks, JavaScript frameworks available in the market like Vue, 55, React, Angular. You should use all those frameworks. It will allow you to create applications faster, and they will be much more responsive. So, what are the coolest JavaScript helpers out there in the market? You have various things in JavaScript today, like loaders, transpilers, your JavaScript frameworks. You have bundlers. You have to use all of these if you want to create a very responsive and a very intuitive and easy to use JavaScript user interface. So these are some of the JavaScript helpers out there. These are some of the frameworks. You have Vue, Beautify, White, Lodash, Require.js, React, Bootstrap, jQuery, Node.js, of course, npm, yeah, the vanilla JavaScript. You can use AgGrid. You can use Babel. Of course, you can use Webpack to bundle. Byte is a bundler for Beautify framework. Webpack is a universal bundler for all your JavaScript frameworks. AgGrid is a paid framework. You can contact AgGrid to get the complete code for grid manipulations. It has many cool features as you have in your typical spreadsheet softwares like Microsoft Excel. And what you must learn before you start creating your own widgets. Since the 3D Experience platform relies on the require.js module to create JavaScript modules, it's a require.js is a JavaScript framework which implements the asynchronous module definition. This is the module pattern used by Dassault systems. So you have to learn require.js because this is a de facto standard to include your JavaScript modules into this widget code. You have to learn Node.js. Node.js, as you know, it's based on Chromium engine. It's a IDE. You can say it's an IDE because it allows you to run your JavaScript code, test your JavaScript code. You can use the npm, that is the Node.js package manager, for downloading all the JS frameworks, the dependencies, etc. And this allows you to code faster. So Node.js npm, this is kind of a universal framework available to all JavaScript developers out there. They use it very frequently to create any new JavaScript user interfaces. You should use Webpack as a bundler. As I said, Vue Beautify is one of the framework which has its own bundler called Byte. Bundler allows you to create concise builds of JavaScript because you do not want to load 2 megabytes of JavaScript code onto the browser for it to execute when you can do with just say 500 kilobytes of JavaScript. So bundlers allow you to precisely bundle the JavaScript code so that your overall package is smaller and easier to load on the browser, and your UI thus becomes more responsive and faster. Yes, you should learn IndexDB. IndexDB is a cool feature available in Chromium, in Chrome browser. It is as the name suggests, it's a database which is indexed, but resides on the browser. But it's not the full-fledged database. Of course, it's something which allows you to cache information and store it temporarily in the browser when your typical session cache and local cache, these are not enough. So this is quite helpful. As written, it also helps you to store files and blobs as well. Here's the link. You can check out this link to learn more on IndexDB. IndexDB, if I have to tell you how do you locate it, you open the developer options by pressing F12 on your browser. If you use Chrome or Edge, you see it under the application tab in your developer options window. You'll see IndexDB here. If you have created your own IndexDB through a JavaScript code, then you can see the data, something like this. It uses the typical keys and values kind of framework to store information, of course, and these keys can be primary keys and foreign keys if you want to create multiple tables of data in your IndexedDB, and all those can be indexed as well for faster retrieval, of course. And of course, these are all executable, doable through JavaScript. So this is the index. You see, you can create an index. The tables are noted with this small icon. The indexes are like this. You'll see a key path. You'll see the primary key. If you are indexing the information of a particular table, if you have to create an index for every table in your IndexedDB database. So under each table, you can create multiple indexes, and these indexes will have this information. And then when you want to retrieve the information, you will definitely not retrieve it directly from the table, but rather from the index so that it's faster. So there are out-of-the-box web services published by Dassault, which allow you to fetch different kind of information from the 3D Experience platform. The list of all those web services are available under this title called REST Web Service References. So it is available on the DS documentation. If you have access to the 3D Access product documentation, then you can go to this link and you can access the REST web services available for every widget developer to use. Other than that, you have some out-of-the-box JavaScript APIs. Some of those JavaScript APIs allow you to interact with the widgets. So these are the some of the functions, JavaScript functions that you would use to say like drag and drop information from one custom widget to the other. You will use these JavaScript functions to search and use the tags, search tags for various functionalities of various processes. And then you have this WAF data API, which allows you to invoke any web service, whether it is published in the 3D Experience platform or it is a web service published by a third-party application. So you can use this function. Of course, you can write your own JAX code or other code to invoke the uh, services, but this is one wrapper available for you to invoke any web service. And then you can use these publish and subscribe JavaScript functions to publish some custom events from one widget, and you can listen to those custom events from another widget to do some processes accordingly. And then you can use the drag and drop JavaScript APIs to drag information from one to the other. So how do you set up your widget? As I told you in the beginning of the session, that all the widget code should be deployed in a separate web server, and that web server must communicate with your 3D Experience platform. 3D Experience platform has multiple application servers. One application server for 3D Space or Innovia. There is an application server for dashboard, and then there are native applications. So you have to create another web server, just the web server, not an application server, just the web server, and you have to allow it to communicate with the your dashboard application server or the 3D Space application server. So first, to create the widget web server, what you do is you have to open your web server's configuration file. If you are using an Apache web server, it's usually an http d.conf file, which resides in the conf folder of your Apache application. So what you can do is you have to first create your web server on a specific port. Say that can be 9999. So you create a tag called virtual host, and then you specify the you have to specify or configure this web server to be HTTPS compliant. So for that you have to say secure socket layer engine is on. Then you provide it a server alias. Okay, suppose it's a widget server, so you can name it as widgetserver.sgs.com in our case. Then you have to create its SSL certificate because it is an HTTPS compliant web server. You create a SSL certificate and put the name of those CRT and the key files as you typically do for your 3D dashboard or the entire 3D experience platform application servers. Of course, you specify a directory where all your code resides on this web server, and you just create this web server, and then we'll see how we allow it to communicate with the 3D dashboard. So then what you do, how do you allow it to communicate with the your 3D experience platform? By setting the proxy and the reverse proxy for your widget web server. To do that, what you do is in your existing virtual host entry for 3D experience platform, which is usually 443 at the port number 443, where you have your server name as a 3D, your 3D experience platform's server name. There you would see that all these configuration files for the different application server like passport, dashboard, federated, and 3D space, these are already available. So you will already find such an entry in your web servers httpd.conf. Within that entry for that 44th virtual host which listens on port 443 and which includes your passport, dashboard, and federated 3D space application servers configurations, there you have to add the proxy and the reverse proxy entry for your widget server. So for example, our widget server here is widgetserver.sgs.com, which runs on port 9999. So I set that as a proxy, and I also set it as a reverse proxy because you can directly connect to the widget server to see your application. You might have other applications which are not widgets hosted on these servers. For that you would need a proxy. You want this widget server to communicate with 3D dashboard, passport, and 3D space. So that has to be allowed using the reverse proxy. So reverse proxy allows your server to communicate with the other servers. Now, in order to use the run your app, because as I told you during the initial slides of this session, is that uh, all the applications which run using the run your app widget, it runs on the untrusted dashboard domain. So for that, you need to first create this untrusted web server if it was not already created when you did the installation. You can do it later. To do that, you have to just create another virtual host entry which listens at port 443, and you have to create a server name which is untrusted dot typical 3D dashboard dot whatever. In our case, we can do it as untrusted dot 3D dashboard dot sgs.com. uh, you can typically refer to your existing 3D dashboard domain and just create a new name by prefixing untrusted dot to it. That can be your untrusted domain. Now you will see that this untrusted domain, it is not allowed to speak to any other application servers of 3D experience platform like 3D space, passport. It is only allowed to communicate with your usual 3D dashboard application server. So for that, you will add the 3D dashboards httpd.fragment.conf file into this virtual host entry for this untrusted widget. You will not allow this untrusted domain to communicate with other application servers like 3D space or passport. So you add all the entries, make it HTTPS compliant, you put the SSL engine, you put the SSL certificate, you create SSL certificate for this untrusted domain, but you will only include the configuration file of your current 3D dashboard application. So this is how you create a untrusted, and thus since this untrusted is not allowed, untrusted domain server is not allowed to communicate with the 3D space, so it cannot access its information or any data from the 3D space, which is the Innovia application. Now when you create a widget, so what do? You have to package it in a specific folders. So typically this is the folder structure of any widget application that you may create. What you would see is that new widget server, you will have a amdconf.js, which is a configuration file for asynchronous model definition, which uses the required JS. Here you put in some entries which allows you to locate the JavaScript functions which are hosted in the 3D space platform. Since this particular widget code is deployed on a different web server, but you can still use the JavaScript functions which is hosted on the 3D space application server. So in order to do that, if you are using require.js, there is a mechanism through which you add some entries under amdconf.js, and using those entries or some specific nomenclature of the functions, you this system you put the entry of the 3D spaces URL into this amdconf.js so that it fetches those functions from the 3D space application server. So that's the capability of required is you can use JavaScript functions from multiple application servers into one code. So you can then you create the folder, the top folder of your specific widgets. For every widget, you create a folder. For example, I have created a widget for SGS Run Your App, which is supposed to be run as an untrusted widget, which has this HTML and some text files. It might have some natural language support files. It will have some JavaScripts, put them in the separate scripts folder. It will have the CSS, put them in the separate styles folder. This is a typical thing that you will do. What we'll do is if you reach out to us at marketing@streetcraft.com, we will share, we can share this code with you so that you can create your own widget. So thank you everybody. Thank you everyone for listening to me patiently. I hope I could entice you into writing your own widget code. To begin with, you can start your own untrusted widgets, and as I told you, reach out to us at the email specified in the previous slide, and we'll share the sample code with you, which you can enhance and make your own processes and start writing your own widget code. And for more information and for more details, you can still email us at the same email ID. We'll try to get back to you and answer all your questions as much as possible. Thank you once again. See you again. Bye bye.